For more, I'm joined by Anthony Chan, the former Chief Economist at JPMorgan. So, Anthony, China, the world's largest manufacturer and exporter of toys. 80% of all toys come from China. And with manufacturing at a standstill right now, how is this impacting the industry and even other industries?
Well, there's no question that global supply chains are going to be compromised, not only in the toy industry, but in many other sectors, technology, even in the medical profession. So that's going to be a real serious issue. Now, we know that a lot of the workers are still facing bottlenecks as they get into the factory so they can start producing. And for toys specifically, the real critical time comes as you move into April, May, and June, because that's when they really start to gear up production for the holiday sales season. And if they, of course, miss that, that's the best time and the most important time of the year for the toy manufacturers, given the fact that there are really no alternative because over 80% of the toys that are sold in the United States come from China. And then the last thing that I would mention is that even when the factories open up, they all have to take all these precautions to make sure that there is no spreading of this virus. So therefore, the productivity of the factories may be somewhat less than they are under normal circumstances.
Let me back up to what you just said about this being the slowest time of the year for the toy industry. Is it possible to make up this lag later on in the year?
It gets very challenging because there's a very small window. If all of a sudden somehow these factories are not able to get back to full capacity very quickly in, say, May, June, or July, then it becomes almost impossible for them to be able to produce everything that is required. And of course, coming on the back of a kind of a weak season last year for toys, to have this happen on top of that is certainly a serious blow to the industry. But we should also not forget the human suffering that has gone on because of this. Yes, the toy industry is at risk, but what we're seeing with all the pain and suffering out there is even more important.
We know that China is seeing some competition from India and Vietnam when it comes to toys. They're taking some of the load with companies heading there for manufacturing. What does that mean for Southeast Asia, and can we see potential permanent moves there?
I really don't think we're going to see permanent moves because you're absolutely right. We're starting to see some of the toys being produced in Vietnam, maybe even Malaysia, even Mexico, and even some toys are being produced in the Ukraine. But many of these countries don't have the same infrastructure that China has to make this process very efficiently. So I think that at this juncture, China is an important manufacturer of toys and will continue to be an important manufacturer. Doesn't mean that you're not going to see a little diversification, but I really doubt whether or not China will have to exceed the opportunity to produce toys and give that to other countries. It's certainly not going to happen. India certainly doesn't have the infrastructure that China has to produce those toys and then transport them efficiently, because even in some countries where labor costs are a little bit lower than they are in China, the costs tend to rise when you start to take into account the logistics of moving these toys onto the United States.
All right, Anthony Chan, always great to hear your take. Thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure.